I've always believed there's something obscene about watching a man lose control. The way his voice cracks, the desperate tremor in his hands as he demands the world return what it's stolen. It's pathetic. I learned that lesson young, standing in a dark hallway while my father begged my mother not to walk out with her packed suitcase. He sobbed into her coat sleeve like a child. She didn't even look back when the door clicked shut behind her. So when I got the video of Lila, my girlfriend of 3 years, kissing her high school sweetheart in a corner of some neon splash rooftop party, I didn't feel rage. Not in the sense normal people do. I felt something tighter, deeper, like the precise pull of piano wire when you know exactly where to wrap it around a neck. The message came from Marcus, a friend I trust more than most. Bro, you need to see this. Sorry. No preamble, just the file. I was sitting on my balcony, city lights flickering like the last heartbeat of something terminal. I replayed the video 3 times. Her laugh, head thrown back, the ex leaning in, their lips grazing at first, playful, then a slow, hungry merge. The part that fascinated me most wasn't the kiss. It was her eyes just before she closed them. Relaxed, like she was exactly where she'd always wanted to be. I didn't throw my phone or storm into that party like a righteous fool. I didn't text or call her. I just sat there, tracing the rim of my whiskey glass with my thumb, feeling that old lesson unspool inside my chest. Control is everything. You might think I'm weak for not confronting her. You'd be wrong. Weakness is reactive. Strength is patience. I have no interest in fighting for what's already rotting in my hands. But I do have an interest in watching her choke on her choices, the way my father never made my mother regret hers. A faint breeze pushed cigarette smoke from the neighbor's balcony into mine. I leaned back, feeling the stale warmth fill my lungs. For a second, I wondered if this was how my father felt when he shut the door that night, hollowed out, humiliated, but too cowardly to become something better. Not me. I checked the time. 12:47 a.m. They'd be laughing now, drunk on nostalgia and cheap vodka, weaving fairy tales about how it used to be when they were 17 and stupid and invincible. Let them. I want her to taste that perfect moment, so that when I cut it away, it stings deeper. Control is everything. Rage is useless. And betrayal? Betrayal is just a scalpel for peeling back a liar's skin to see what rots underneath. Tonight I will stay calm. Tomorrow I start my work. And when I'm finished, she won't even remember what it felt like to be loved by me. The next morning, Lila came home wearing last night's perfume and someone else's confidence. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door like nothing had shifted in the orbit of our lives. I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh cup of black coffee, my laptop open but untouched. "Morning, Jules," she chirped, voice a little too bright. Her heels clicked on the marble, each step a tiny confession she thought I couldn't hear. I didn't look up from my screen. "Morning. Fun party?" She froze behind me. I felt it, that hairline fracture of guilt threatening to bleed through her skin. But she caught herself, smoothed it over with that infuriating smile she uses when she lies about something small, like where she spent an extra $100. "Yeah, just the usual boring office people and some old friends. You know how it is." I closed my laptop softly, met her eyes over my coffee rim. I wanted to see if the shadow of her kiss would flicker there, if the ghost of him still lingered behind her pupils. "I bet it was nostalgic, seeing your first love again." A crack this time, barely visible, but there. The corner of her mouth tightened before she caught it. "Oh, you know about that." She laughed too quickly. "Just bumped into him, Julian. He showed up with friends. Nothing dramatic." I wondered if she rehearsed that line in the Uber back here, legs still sticky with the taste of him. My pulse stayed calm, steady. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. I didn't want an apology. I wanted her to hang herself with her own words. "I trust you," I said, voice low, almost bored. "No drama, right?" She blinked, then leaned down and kissed my temple. I let her. Her lipstick smelled like mint and guilt. Once she disappeared into the bedroom, I opened a hidden folder on my laptop. Marcus had already sent more than the video. He's a nosy bastard but loyal to a fault. Screenshots of texts between Lila and her precious first love, dating back months. Meetings at hotels under vague calendar entries labeled client brief. Secret dinners when I worked late. The party was just the first time they'd stopped pretending to be subtle. Every betrayal has layers, tiny fractures under the surface long before the final break. I traced each one, each lie, and built the map in my mind. I didn't want revenge just for the kiss. I wanted to dismantle the comfort she took for granted. I started small. That afternoon, I messaged Marcus. "Keep your eyes on her. Don't get caught," he replied with a thumbs up. We'd been boys since college, bonded over cheating partners and the quiet thrill of mutual secrets. He loved playing detective. Next, I called her phone company and, with a little social engineering, added a second line to her account routed through a duplicate SIM I now controlled. Her messages, calls, mine in real time. I read every giggling confession to her ex while she curled up next to me at night, pretending to be too tired for sex. She wasn't the only betrayer. Her best friend Clara, too. Sweet, smiling Clara, who once swore she'd scratch out any girl's eyes who hurt me. She was the one covering for Lila, telling me she was at yoga or girls' night. They thought I was oblivious because I let myself be, but now I was wide awake. A week later, she slipped up. She told me she'd be late because of a client dinner. I nodded and offered to pick her up afterward. She kissed my cheek, promised it'd be boring. An hour later, Marcus sent a picture of her pressed against her ex's car behind an upscale bar. Her leg hitched around his waist like she couldn't get enough of being 17 again. I studied the photo over a glass of scotch. There was no rage, just a strange calm, like the hum in your ears after a bomb goes off and you realize you're still standing. This wasn't about him. He was a symptom, not a cause. The real rot was Lila's hunger for comfort and thrill wrapped together. She liked the thrill of betrayal more than the man himself. So I wouldn't confront her, I'd feed it. I booked us a weekend getaway, an expensive cabin on the lake, far enough that she couldn't slip away for her secret texts without me noticing. I watched her eyes flicker when I told her. Panic she buried under forced gratitude. "Just you and me?" she asked. "Of course," I said, smiling. "I think we need it." She hugged me tighter than she had in months. I almost pitied her. At the cabin, I played the perfect boyfriend, cooked her breakfast, lit the fireplace, poured her wine by the lake under moonlight. She tried so hard to pretend, to touch me like she meant it, to giggle when I teased her about our future. At night, I'd step outside and read her messages under the stars. She told him she felt trapped with me, that she couldn't wait to come home and breathe again. She didn't know I'd already planted my final seeds, a series of emails queued in a dead man's switch, screenshots, dates, pictures, copies to her family, her boss, even her ex's fiancé. Yes, he was engaged. That part she conveniently never mentioned. This wasn't petty revenge. This was an excavation. Strip her down to her secrets, expose her to the people she fooled so well, watch them recoil from the rot she kept hidden behind her smile. On our last night at the cabin, she fell asleep on my chest, whispering, "I love you," like an apology. I stroked her hair, my mind miles away, counting the hours until I'd free myself completely. People think betrayal is the climax. They're wrong. It's only the first crack. I was going to widen it until the whole thing collapsed in her hands, while I watched calm as ever from the ashes. The morning after we returned from the lake, Lila acted softer than she had in months. She poured my coffee before I asked, laughed at my dumb jokes, and checked her phone only when she thought I wasn't watching, but her fingers trembled when she typed. She knew something had shifted. She just couldn't name it yet. I savored her confusion. I'd spent too long being predictable. The loyal boyfriend who brought flowers when she said she felt down, who pretended not to see the way she recoiled when I touched her right after she'd been with him. All of it my fault. I'd made it too easy for her to stay comfortable while she danced around her own moral decay. Now I was the one dancing, and she was trying to hear the music. Marcus didn't disappoint. He kept feeding me more. A bank statement here, a tagged photo she forgot to untag, a forwarded email from her ex. Piece by piece, I built her ruin. Not with rage, but with evidence so undeniable it would burn every bridge she thought she could crawl back across when this was over. One night, as she slept in the living room with a glass of wine half drunk beside her, I opened my private folder again. I replayed that first video, her kissing him at the party. I forced myself to watch her smile. The first time I'd watched it, it felt like acid in my veins. Now I only felt clarity. She thought she owned the narrative. She thought she could lie beautifully enough to rewrite our story into something where I'd be the pathetic, scorned lover begging her to stay. She had no idea I'd already authored her ending. I didn't go after her ex directly. That would have been messy beneath me. But I knew something Lila didn't. Her ex's fiancée was newly pregnant. I found her Instagram, a soft collection of baby bump photos and DIY wedding plans. I scrolled through her captions, each more naive than the last. So I created an anonymous account and sent her everything. Not just the party video. No, I gave her the entire timeline. Hotel receipts, screenshots, her fiancé's fake business trips that aligned perfectly with Lila's sudden overnight strategy meetings. I imagined her reading it in bed, the baby growing inside her while the truth ate her from within. Marcus texted me an hour later. She knows. He doesn't yet. Perfect. Let him come home to a storm he didn't even see brewing. Lila wasn't the only one about to drown. At home, I shifted tactics. I didn't distance myself. I did the opposite. I loved her harder than ever. Breakfast in bed, fresh flowers. I even suggested she quit her job to focus on herself. She didn't realize I'd already sent an anonymous tip to HR about her illicit affair with a client, her ex's father, who was conveniently also her biggest account. She would come undone from every angle. Romance, career, reputation. All rotting at once, all tangled with lies she whispered to herself so sweetly that she thought they'd never catch up to her. I began to feel it then, the evolution inside me. The man I used to be, the accommodating fool who mistook being easygoing for being loved, was gone. In his place stood something harder, clearer, immune to her tears. I could look her in the eyes while she lied, stroke her hair while she trembled from nightmares of being caught, and never flinch. The power shifted, slowly at first, then like an avalanche gathering speed. One evening, she sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone with her teeth buried in her lip. She didn't notice me in the doorway. I watched her open a message from her ex. I could see the fear in the hunch of her shoulders. He must have told her. His life in flames, his fiancée packing her bags, her father-in-law threatening to cut him off. She didn't cry. Not yet. She simply stared at the screen, eyes darting back and forth, rewriting her script in real time. When she looked up and saw me, she flinched, a twitch so subtle most men would have missed it. I didn't. I stepped closer, knelt in front of her, lifted her chin. "You okay, baby?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Yeah, just work stress. Want to talk about it?" She opened her mouth, shut it. I watched her push the lie back down her throat. Good girl, keep it there. Choke on it. By the next week, she was an open wound walking on eggshells. Her best friend Clara called to catch up. I answered Lila's phone while she was in the shower. "Julian, hey, can I talk to Lila?" I pictured Clara, always so concerned for my well-being, while she covered for Lila's hotel escapades. "She can't come to the phone," I said. "I thought you should know she's been having a hard time. Things have come to light. You understand?" A pause, then, "What things, Julian?" "Oh, Clara, if you don't already know, maybe you should ask her yourself." I hung up before she could sputter excuses. One more piece falling off the facade. Then came the final push. I needed Lila to feel cornered enough to break character, to confess, beg, try to salvage what she'd taken for granted. So I staged a simple dinner at her favorite Italian place. I booked a private booth, ordered her favorite wine, and dressed in the cologne she used to say made her dizzy. She showed up late, mascara smudged from whatever frantic call she'd taken in the Uber. She tried to hide her trembling hands behind the wine glass. "Julian, what's this about?" Her voice was raw. I leaned in, close enough for her to see just how calm I really was. "Just us. Just a celebration. For everything we've been through. She exhaled a laugh, brittle, humorless. Can we talk honestly tonight? There it was, the crack widening into a canyon. I tilted my head. Of course. She set down her glass with a soft clink. Her eyes glistened. I haven't been fair to you. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But I love you. I do. I let her reach across the table, let her fingers wrap around mine like she could tether herself back to solid ground. Tell me, I murmured. So she did. Not the whole truth, but just enough, framed in pity for herself, blaming the past, blaming me for being too distant, blaming life for tempting her. Each word dripped from her mouth like pus from an infected wound. I nodded, squeezed her hand. Thank you for being honest. She sagged with relief. She thought that was it. Confession equals forgiveness. She never understood me at all. That night, while she slept curled against my chest, I finalized the last emails. Her mother, her boss, her church-going aunt, who always bragged about what a perfect couple we were. I scheduled them all to send at sunrise. I watched her sleep and wondered if she dreamed of running back to him, only to find he'd already cut her off to save himself. I didn't hate her. That was the strangest part. Hatred is exhausting. What I felt was closer to indifference, stained with a clinical fascination. I wondered how long she'd claw at the ruins before accepting no one was coming to pull her out. By dawn, I was up before her. I brewed coffee, folded her favorite sweater on the bed, and left her a note. Thanks for everything. Take care of yourself. Jay. I didn't wake her. She didn't deserve the courtesy. As I closed the door behind me, the first notifications must have begun lighting up her phone like a funeral pyre. I didn't look back, not once. I expected a dozen calls, maybe more. I expected her voice to crack through my voicemail, begging me to explain, to come back, to at least listen. But by the time I switched my phone on again, there was only one message. It wasn't from Lila. It was from Marcus. Bro, she's here. She knows everything. She's losing it. You want me to call the cops? I read that twice, then laughed into my empty apartment. So she'd found Marcus. My loyal ghost in the walls, my eyes and ears. She was desperate enough to show her true teeth to him first. Perfect. I didn't go home right away. I wanted her to sit in the silence I'd left behind, surrounded by rooms that once felt safe. I imagined her rifling through drawers for proof she'd never find, tearing up photos she thought she could erase, pacing circles in the living room where she once whispered sweet lies into my neck. She still thought this was a game she could win by sheer force of tears. Let her think that. When I finally walked in, dusk was bleeding through the blinds. I paused at the threshold, listening. The apartment was too quiet. No TV humming to drown out her thoughts. No wine glass clinking on the coffee table. I found her sitting cross-legged on the floor in the bedroom, phone beside her, hair a tangled mess, eyes swollen from a hurricane of tears she hadn't rationed well. She looked up at me like a stray dog cornered by a bigger predator. Julian, she croaked. I stood there, coat still on, keys in hand. I didn't move closer. I wanted her to feel the ocean between us, even in a room this small. You know, she said. Not a question. A pitiful attempt at a statement. I always did, I said. You were just too busy performing honesty to notice. She tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her. She sank back, arms wrapped around her knees like they could keep her secrets inside. I can fix this, she started. I let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. Fix what? Your mess, your ex's engagement, your job, or the fact that every person who once thought you were flawless now knows exactly what you are? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. For the first time, there was no script for her to recite. Julian, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. No. I stepped closer. Calm. Lethal. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a cathedral of lies and prayed in it every night while I slept beside you. She flinched like I'd struck her. I almost wished I could feel pity, but all I felt was the weight lifting off my chest. Then came the pivot she never expected. She lunged forward, clutching at my legs. Please, if you go, I have nothing. You can hate me, but don't leave me with nothing. Please. I looked down at her, the beautiful ruin I'd once sworn to protect. I thought about how her betrayal hadn't just broken my heart, it had rewritten me. Stronger, sharper, free, and yet here she was, proving one last truth. She didn't love me. She loved what I gave her. The safety, the reputation, the audience for her perfect act. I leaned down, so close she must have thought I might kiss her hair one last time. Lila, I whispered, you were never the love of my life. You were just the lesson I needed to learn. She sobbed into my jeans, snot and mascara staining the fabric. Good. Let her look at that stain tomorrow and remember exactly how low she'd crawled. I gently unhooked her hands from my calf. She didn't resist, just folded in on herself, a marionette with its strings cut. In the silence, my mind flicked through everything I'd done to her, to him, to the lie that had been our life. Some people would call it cruel, but to me, it was surgical, necessary. I hadn't destroyed her out of spite. I destroyed her because in the ashes, I'd found the man I'd buried to keep her happy. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to break anything. I didn't need revenge sex or threats or restraining orders. All I needed was to leave her with exactly what she gave me. Nothing. At the door, I paused. She hadn't moved. Her phone buzzed. Maybe Marcus, maybe her mother, maybe the lawyer she'd soon need. I didn't care. Not anymore. You're free now, Lila, I said, my voice gentle and final. You can chase nostalgia all you want, but don't look for me in the past. I won't be there. Her answer was a hiccup of a sob. I shut the door on it. Outside, the air smelled like rain. Somewhere in the city, her ex was probably drunk, screaming at his ruined life. Her parents would be gossiping over who failed to raise her right. Clara would be spinning new lies to distance herself. And me? I had no plan yet. Only the certainty that I could walk away from the wreckage without dragging it behind me. In that quiet, a thought bloomed. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I transcended it. I didn't move back in with my parents. That would have felt like stepping backward into the version of myself I'd just killed. Instead, I found a short-term lease on the other side of the city. A top-floor studio with creaky wooden floors and windows that let in the sunset hole. It smelled like new paint in freedom. For the first few nights, I didn't sleep much. Not because I missed Lila. That part of me had withered the moment I watched her clutch my legs like a child begging her father not to leave. No, I lay awake because I couldn't stop replaying it. Every twist, every lie she'd woven, every truth I'd torn out, stitch by stitch. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Guilt was for men who doubted themselves. I knew exactly what I'd done and why. I'd chosen myself for the first time in years, and there was no apology in that. I started running at dawn, not to escape anything, but because my body needed to feel the city under my feet at a pace I set. I'd run past sleepy cafes, watch the sunrise catch in the glass towers I used to see only through the windows of cabs driving Lila and me to parties where I'd smile and she'd perform. Now there were no parties, just me, sweat-slicked skin, my lungs burning clean. Each footfall a promise to myself, never again. Marcus dropped by on a Sunday with a six-pack and his crooked grin. He looked at my bare walls and raised his eyebrows. Monk's Cell, huh? I laughed. It surprised me how easily it came now. I'm simplifying. He cracked open a beer and sank onto the floor beside me. We didn't need chairs yet. Just a moment of honest silence between two men who knew what it meant to betray and be betrayed. You think she'll crawl back? He asked after a while. I didn't have to think. She'll try, not because she loves me, because I was her safety net. She can't stand facing herself without an audience telling her she's still worth loving. And if she does? I took a sip. Bitter. Perfect. I'll let her knock. She can stand outside as long as she wants. I won't answer. He clinked his bottle against mine. That's my boy. The first text from her came 2 weeks later. Lila, I miss you. Can we talk? Please. I read it at the bus stop, sunlight warm on my neck. My thumb hovered over the reply icon. I could have written something savage, one final dagger to twist in her gut. But cruelty would mean I still cared, and I didn't, not anymore. I deleted her message without responding. A month later, I ran into Clara at a coffee shop. She didn't see me at first. She was hunched over her phone, whispering furiously to someone who probably had no clue she'd been the third wheel to Lila's circus for years. She looked up, froze when she saw me. Julian! I raised a hand to stop her. Relax, I don't need an apology. She scrambled for words. I didn't know. I mean, I knew a little, but it doesn't matter anymore, I said simply. And it didn't. Clara was a footnote in my old story. I was living in a new one. I left her staring after me as I stepped into the spring sunlight, my coffee warming my palm. I'd thought once that closure would look like revenge, like watching her beg, like seeing her lose everything. And yes, I'd orchestrated every downfall she'd earned. But the real closure wasn't her ruin. It was me walking away from the ashes with clean hands. In the studio, I filled the walls with things that belonged only to me. Prints of cities I planned to visit alone. Notes of music I'd never played because she hated my old guitar. I ordered secondhand furniture piece by piece, savoring the space that felt like a man's room. Mine, not ours. One night I sat cross-legged on the bare floor, strumming that old guitar for the first time in years. My fingers fumbled. My voice cracked. But there was no one to roll her eyes. No one to sigh dramatically that I was too loud for 10 p.m. Just me, my reflection in the window, and the city lights humming their quiet approval. On my birthday, Marcus and a few good friends threw me a small dinner. Nothing fancy, just laughter and bad jokes and no lies stitched into the spaces between conversations. There was a moment when someone asked, half joking, "So, any new girl on the horizon?" I smiled, genuine. Not yet, maybe not for a while. I didn't say it to sound noble. I said it because it was true. I liked waking up to nothing but my own breath. I liked cooking for one. I liked how silence sounded when no one was rehearsing apologies behind it. For the first time in my life, I had enough company for myself. A few days later, a final envelope arrived at my door. No return address, but I knew the handwriting even before I tore it open. Lila's last plea, inked in frantic lines. You destroyed me. You ruined my job, my family, my life. I loved you and you repaid me like this. How could you be so cruel? I traced my fingertip over her words. Each sentence was a confession she'd never admit to the world, but one she couldn't help bleeding out for me. I folded the letter neatly, dropped it into the trash, and opened the window wide. The spring breeze caught my hair, carried her ghost out into the city that didn't know her lies anymore. Some nights I still dream of her. Not the betrayal, but the before. The way she looked at me when I was still dumb enough to believe her love was pure. In those dreams, I don't feel hate. I feel gratitude. She broke me so thoroughly, I had no choice but to rebuild myself better. And now when I run at dawn and the sun splits the city in gold, I don't think about who I was. I think about who I'm still becoming. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.